My name is Russ Seltenwright, and it's my honor to welcome you to the long-awaited dedication of the Veterans Tribute Tower. This morning we are honored to have two speakers, both with strong ties to Georgia National Cemetery and to the Veteran Tower. First is a former director and the director during the planning, construction, and delivery of the tower, James Mitchum, enlisted in the Army in 1983 for 4 years and got out 25 years later. His assignments included the 1st, 4th, 5th, and 10th Infantry Divisions, 2 signal units, the United Kingdom Logistic Element, 7th Army Command, and the military-affiliated radio system in Mogadishu, Somalia. Jamie stayed with the Department of Defense following his time in the Army, working for the next 6 years in Stuttgart, Heidelberg, and Wiesbaden. Nice duty. In 2013, he was accepted as a cemetery director intern with the Department of Veteran Affairs National Cemetery Administration. He was assistant director of Tahoma, Washington, and director of South Florida, Sacramento Valley, Georgia, and Marietta National Cemeteries. Now fully retired, he is completing his bachelor's degree with a major in history. Simultaneously, his beautiful bride, Mary, is earning her master's degree in statistical studies. Given the opportunity, Jamie will tell you of meeting Mary on a Greyhound bus in 1981. Then waiting patiently for 38 years to join her in marriage. Jamie is the proud father of 3 adult children who reside in South Carolina and is equally dedicated to his 2 wonderful stepchildren in Arcata, California. Jamie?
Thank you very much for that for very warm welcome. And as you heard, my beautiful bride is studying statistical science and will have her degree later this month. And she was describing to me, I don't know what statistical sciences are about, but I listened. But she was describing to me this chart where the heat index goes up and my remarks shorten, and the applause when I leave it gets louder. So I'll see if I can't try to put that into exercise. But I want to thank Charles Capps and the Georgia National Cemetery Advisory Council for inviting me to share a few words today. A special shout out to the staff here at Georgia National Cemetery. I hope they know that I love them all very much. To the acting director and my friend, Robert Bryson. Robert is also a former director of the Fort Jackson National Cemetery. A retired Army Sergeant Major. He worked with the POW MIA accounting agency, identifying remains of lost military personnel from previous conflicts. Thank you for your service, Robert. I do want to do a shout out to the new chairman of the Advisory Council, Byron Hall. I understand Byron's not here today. He's probably suffering some of the same fates that we have this morning. A few hiccups, but he fell off a jet ski, I understand, playing with his kids this week. But we expect a full recovery. I think Byron is a retired Chief Petty Officer with the Navy, and he's a former Assistant State Captain with the Patriot Guard. So all I can say is our veterans of Georgia are in really good hands with folks like Byron and Robert. Thank you for your service. So I was just thinking, this is the first time I've been at a podium at a national cemetery, and I don't work here. I could say anything I want. This could be fun, but Russ, if I get into treacherous territory, please ask me to move aside, okay? But rest assured, no matter what the venue, I could never bring any discredit to the Georgia National Cemetery or the Advisory Committee, 2 most exceptional organizations I've ever been a part of. Mary asked me earlier this week how many times we might hear the phrase, "Thank you to Charles Capps." and I responded without hesitation a whole bunch of times, yet not nearly enough to truly warrant his effort and this great success. Please join me again in a round of applause for Charles. Lauren Minter, your efforts and our appreciation are very difficult to measure. And if you're wondering what Lauren has done to make today happen, just insert everything. And I think if the council ever gets an invoice for even half of her effort, we're in big trouble. Thank you again, Lauren. In my opinion, our government does an exceptional job of caring for veterans and providing the final resting place, this final and most sacred benefit. Consider the following. There are over 155 national cemeteries operated by the National Cemetery Administration in the United States and Puerto Rico, well over 100 state and tribal veteran cemeteries and veteran cemeteries in our other U.S. territories like Guam and Saipan. 14 national cemeteries operated by the National Park Service. Hallowed places like Gettysburg, Shiloh, Vicksburg come to mind. 26 overseas cemeteries operated by the American Battle Monuments Commission located in Europe, North Africa, the Philippines, Mexico, Panama. Mainly, though not exclusive to World War I and World War II burials. Of course, there is Arlington National Cemetery and the Soldiers' Home Cemetery in Washington, administered by the Army. Nearly 6 million service members and spouses interred in sacred soil all over the nation, indeed all over the world. Places almost as beautiful as Georgia National Cemetery. In the state of Georgia, such cemeteries that provide the resting places for heroes are Milledgeville and Glenville, operated by the state, Andersonville by the National Park Service, and of course there is Marietta and Georgia National, operated by both the National Cemetery Administration and George LaValita. George has been with us for 16 years. Thank you, George. Thank you. So there's a little story that connects Marietta to Georgia National. Nearly 160 years ago, a man by the name of Henry Cole donated the land for Marietta National for that cemetery. Henry had been a northerner who came to live in Marietta, worked on the railroads, and when the war broke out, he was a northern unionist who stayed in Marietta, Georgia during the war. That's a pretty dangerous living. Somewhere along the line, he's accused of being a spy, he's arrested, he's sent to a prison in South Carolina. He even incurs some injury and some illness that stayed with him for the rest of his life. But after the war, he held no grudges. None to the south for arresting him, nor to the north for abandoning him. Rather, in an act of reconciliation, he tried to provide the land for both Union and Confederate burials. Politics of the day prevented this from happening, but he did sell the U.S. government the land for Union burials for the grand sum of, does anybody know? $1, that's right. So we're going to move forward 130 years. Marietta National continues to provide burials, and they reach maximum capacity. Scott Hudgens, whom you'll hear a little more about shortly from our friend Bruce Williams, but Mr. Hudgens set out to provide land for a new national cemetery. In short, it was an arduous and difficult process, but Mr. Hudgens persevered and succeeded. But he would not be outdone by Mr. Henry Cole, and he provided this land to the government for exactly $0. 770 acres that we occupy this morning. Georgia must be the only place in America where we have 2 national cemeteries that cost the taxpayer $1. Of course, the government invested significant resources developing these cemeteries, and whatever the cost, I know you'll agree that the result has been spectacular. We're going to fast forward again to 2015, and the Advisory Council is inspired and wishes to donate a Carillon to the cemetery. And who volunteers to lead this effort? Charles Capps. Now, I think everybody else was at the Waffle House that day, but Charles took the torch. Now, Charles, Didn't anyone tell you the history lesson of Henry Cole and Scott Hudgens and the tumultuous efforts they went through? And they were just trying to donate the land. You told Uncle Sam you'd do it all. Raise the money, design, have it built, transport it, installed, and provide a fund to maintain this Carillon in perpetuity. Didn't you realize the more you provide, the more red tape you would have to endure? The journey of Veterans Tower to Georgia National was certainly loaded with red tape, hurdles, and obstacles. Throughout, it seems Charles would take 3 steps forward, 2 back, 1 to the side, a deep breath, a sigh, occasionally a Bloody Mary, and he would wake up and continue the mission. But more so than a Bloody Mary, I think Charles had an unfailing ace card in his arsenal of determination. Margie. Charles and I talked frequently, on the phone or in my office, often when it was after a significant step towards reaching the goal. Sometimes it was during one of those unforeseen, yet almost predictable emails from someone in central office, asking for additional information or suggesting a slight change. I think you know what slight means in bureaucratic lingo. For Charles, it often meant more aspirin and more money to raise. It was during one of these exchanges I learned the phrase, "Jamie, I feel like the wind has left my sails." Yet after a long talk, a longer drive home, and a chat with Margie, Charles was back at it, as he did over and over again. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why we are here and why the tower is here today. I remember the first time a cemetery at Carillon ever touched my life. Over 20 years ago, I was visiting the Lorraine American Cemetery in Saint-Avold, France, a magnificent World War II cemetery, home to 10,972 marble crosses and Star of David grave markers. Americans whose mission was to liberate, not conquer. At noon each day, the Carillon there chimes 12 times and plays a patriotic American song. On this particular day, I found myself in the midst of the cemetery. As the Carillon played its tribute, I turned slowly, absorbing the markers, the manicured landscapes, and the monuments. Tears flowed down my cheeks as America the Beautiful played on French soil. In all my fortunate travels, this has been the most poignant scene in all of Europe. For without the men who rest there, those more well-known scenes, places like the Eiffel Tower, the castles of the Rhine River, the ruins of ancient Rome, those may very well not be visible to anyone had it not been for the man who rests in that cemetery, indeed in all our nation's cemeteries. In an effort to conclude, let us now return home to Georgia. I stepped down from the National Cemetery Administration in October of 2020, but I have never left Georgia National Cemetery. Today, over 27,000 veterans and family members, all heroes, rest here. I visit often, after hours and on the weekends, and listen to the Carillon and talk to the families. Their reaction to the Carillon is a beautiful sight. And as an old cemetery guy, I'm not afraid to tell you, I also talk to those who sleep there and listen to their stories and all they have to say. Ladies and gentlemen, I am very, very guilty of mentioning only a fraction of the people and organizations who contributed in so many ways to Veterans Tower. But this evening, perhaps, or on any given evening, when taps sounds from the tower at 7 o'clock and flows through the fields of headstones, acknowledging our debt to those who served, if you listen closely, 27,615 thank yous will echo back and join a chorus of gratitude to all who made this tower possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamie. It was inspiring.